My name is Chris Brindell. I am the coordinator of educational technology here at Shelton, talking about what exactly is Read&Write and OrbitNote. They are two separate applications, but really they're kind of the same application. They are both developed by a company called TextHelp, TextHelp. And the difference between the two is that OrbitNote is specifically for PDFs. It allows them to have all of the tools that they would use in Read&Write, but then gives them the added advantage of being able to annotate onto PDF documents. Whereas Read&Write obviously is not utilized in PDFs, but it's used pretty much everywhere else. If your student is accessing anything through the Chrome browser, they should, in theory, be able to take advantage of Read&Write and or OrbitNote. And we're going to be taking a look at Read&Write because that's the primary app that students are going to be using. Our teacher here has provided us with two activities. One is a Pulley Lab, which is a Google Doc, and one is an Inclined Planes Lab, which is a PDF. So again, we're going to focus first on Read&Write. So I'm going to open up this Pulley Lab assignment, select our document, and here I am inside of this Google Doc. And if I come up to the top right-hand corner, so Baby Yoda has Chrome installed and has signed in with his Shelton credentials. And because of that, he actually has direct access to Read&Write. So that's the real important piece here. If you're doing this at home on a home computer, is to make sure that you have Chrome installed and your student is logged into Chrome using their Shelton credentials. When I click on the purple puzzle piece, we can see that a new bar has popped up here at the top of my document, and this is the Read&Write toolbar. We have lots of options here. We're not going to cover every single one today, but they are somewhat self-explanatory. If you hover over a button, it'll give you the name of that tool, and you should be able to kind of discern what that tool is intended to do. So we're going to focus right now on the text-to-speech or narration tool that is built into Read&Write. So I'm going to select the text that I want to be read aloud, and I am going to then press the play button. I apologize in advance if the audio does not come through perfectly. That's just kind of the nature of the situation here, but let's go ahead and give it a play.
Objective: observe how pulleys change the direction of force in.
So I can press pause here, and obviously the narration will pause on the word that it's currently on. If I hit pause again, it will pick back up.
Put and multiply the.
And then if I decide to end the narration, I just hit stop and the highlights go away. But you'll notice that as the computer is reading out loud, it has the entire sentence highlighted in yellow and then the actively read aloud word highlighted in blue so the students can actually follow along. So again, I'll press play.
Objective: observe how pulleys change the direction of force input and multiply the force input.
Okay. And the voice is very robotic. Now, the students do have the ability to change the voice or even to change the speed at which it's reading. And if they go up here into the three dots to the far right of this little Read&Write toolbar, then we have the option for settings. So I'm going to click on settings, a new window appears, and here's where I can select a different voice. Make sure to use a US English voice because a lot of our students might be exposed to words that they've not seen before or even heard read out loud before. And it's really important to make sure that they are using US English voices. The two most popular voices tend to be Ava and Samantha. And so I will click Ava's voice, and here is where I can change the speed at which she's reading, but they can bring it up higher, make it faster, bring it down lower, make it slower. Right around typically in that 30 to 40 range is where most students enjoy having that reading rate. So I've selected my voice, I've adjusted my speed, and I'm actually going to increase it a little bit because I had it at 35. So I'm going to increase it up to 40, hit save. And now I'm going to highlight once again and press play.
Objective: observe how police change the direction of force input and multiply the force input.
And so the kids can kind of play around with those settings and find a voice and a speed that works best for them. Now then, the next part of this, after the text to speech, is going to be speech to text, or what Read&Write calls talk and type. So talk and type is going to allow the students to be able to talk to their computer and have it type out for them. If I come down here, we can see the question. Let's come down to this last one. So a student would come up here to the talk and type icon, and we're going to click on that. They do need to make sure that they click allow, and we'll see that there's a little icon that pops up to the left over here, and you can see as I talk in real time at the bottom of my box, it is actually typing out every word that I speak. However, you'll notice that there is no punctuation. I can press that microphone to stop as I go back through, and I can read this text, and it's very accurate at typing out the words that the students are saying. But again, it does not do any sort of punctuation, and it will struggle with capitalizing proper nouns such as New York. So it is important for students to still go back through those responses and make the appropriate edits. They can also simply talk their punctuation. Hi, comma, my name is Chris Brindell, period. I'm from San Antonio, Texas originally, period. And so then they can come back in here, make their changes. I didn't say comma there, so there's a comma. The next part then is we are going to take a look. We're going to move away from a Google Doc, and we're going to take a look at a website. So here I have Britannica.com pulled up. We're talking about simple machines, so we'll continue with that trend. And here I have a website. So I've got ads over here on the right. I've got ads on the bottom. As I scroll through, I'm going to see ads embedded right here, embedded within the article. There's just ads everywhere. And so one of the great tools of Read&Write on a website, if I click the purple puzzle piece, and now I can actually drag this toolbar around, because on a website, there may be things up at the top that I need to click on. So the toolbar, we can move that around and get that out of the way if we're needing to access something else on that particular page. And so one of my favorite features of Read&Write, especially when viewing sites, is there is a tool here called Simplify Page. And watch this. I'm going to click that one button. It opens a new tab, and it is trying to intelligently pull out all of the important information from that article and strip out all of the ads. When it strips out the ads, sometimes it will take out pictures that are relevant to that article, but really all of the text should be in there. And just like before, I can highlight what I want to be read aloud, hit the play button. And so I have the full range of tools that I would have had if I was inside the Google Doc. And on top of that, I also have the ability to, if your student finds it advantageous when they have colored paper or colored text, they actually have 4 options here. So standard black text on white background, or what we call dark mode. So this is the white text on black background. We also have, fair warning here, it will be bright, these next 2 options, but we have blue text on a yellow background, and we have yellow text on a blue background. They can also change the size of the font. So I can make this bigger to make it a little bit easier to read. They have even incorporated changing up the text type. They can also change the spacing of the lines. They can have 1.5 spacing or double spacing. So these are all things that are intended to help the student better identify and read the information, taking out all of the distractions if there's a bunch of ads, and then being able to change the fonts and the background colors and things like that to make it a little bit easier for them to read. We're going to take a look at the other tools. We do have this screen masking, and so this is a great tool for students to use to focus on individual lines of text or paragraphs of text so that they don't get overwhelmed with a bunch of text on a document or on a website. Right over here, we have the little icon, screen masking icon with our settings button. So we can come in here and change the background colors. We can also change the opacity of the background and make it more blacked out if we want to, or less. We can also change the reading light opacity. So if I want the reading light, it doesn't really change anything because this is the white color. Let me change it to like yellow. There we go. So we can see that much better now. And then the reading light height. So it's going to adjust the thickness of our screen mask here to greater or less, depending on what they want. And then they can always just hit reset to default, save, and then they'll be able to use whatever configuration they want. Now, to get rid of it, you'll notice that the screen masking icon up top has gone purple and has a little dot underneath it. That means it's turned on, that it's active. All we need to do is click to turn that back off. And now we have, kind of the standard view. The next tools are the highlighters, and the highlighters are the foundation of some of my favorite components to read and write. And so you have your standard yellow, green, blue, and pink. We're going to come through and we're going to find, some text that we think is important. A wedge is used for splitting wood. That's good information. I'm going to make that green. Wheel and axle is made up of a circular frame that revolves around a rod, otherwise known as an axle. That's good information. I'm going to use pink. We can continue to highlight things, just picking colors kind of at random here. No real rhyme or reason at this moment, just for our purposes today. And then I'll do one more highlight, and it's blue. So I've gone through and I've highlighted some important information. And this is all fine and well, but if I hit refresh or if I close this tab and I come back to it later on, all my highlights are going to be gone. So what is the purpose behind the highlights? Well, it is to either collect them or to create a vocabulary list. So we're going to do collection first. So I've got a bunch of highlights here. I'm going to hit the collect highlights button. It's going to let me sort my highlights either by color or position within the document. And so right now I've got it sorted by sorted by color. I'm going to say sort by position instead. And then I can decide which colors do I want to be brought over. Maybe I don't want any of the blues to be brought over, or greens, or in this case, I want all of them to be brought over. So I just have a few clicks, hit OK. We have to wait for just a moment, but what it's doing in the background is accessing Google Docs and taking all of those highlights that we just did on that document and brings them into my Google Doc. And what's even better is that it actually provides a link to that website where I pulled that information from. And they can do this as many times as they want. It will title the document as highlight, and then based on the name of whatever article it is, in this case, it was just Simple Machine. So it says highlight Simple Machine. If I go to another website and I do highlight collection again, it's going to make a different Google Doc with those separate highlights, but I can simply copy, paste, and bring them back over to this one if I want to have one document with all of my highlights from various resources. So we're going to close that, and I am going to erase that. So now we're going to take a look at highlights, but as it pertains to vocabulary lists. And this is where I think it is incredibly powerful. So I'm going to do science, and it doesn't matter the colors here. Inclined plane. Oops. And then I'll do pulley. I haven't done yellow yet. There we go. So I've got some key terms here, and what I'm going to do next is use, it kind of looks like a bullet list, but it's the vocabulary list button. Much like we just did with the collect highlights, we've got words, proper nouns, such as New York, and then all I have to do is click the vocabulary list, select or deselect colors that I do or don't want, hit OK. And this is where the magic really comes into play, because all I did was highlight a few words, click one or two buttons, and this is what it has generated for me. It creates a table with word, meaning, symbol, and notes. And it gives me the words that I had highlighted. So science, inclined plane, lever, pulley, wheel. It gives me different definitions. So the students can come in here and identify which definition is contextually important to what they're discussing. And then it even provides them, if it can, provides them with pictures associated with that particular word. And then finally, a fourth column for notes so they can add their own information in here. This is all completely editable for the students. So the student can come into our definition here for science and figure out which definition is most applicable to what they're studying. So we're going to delete the rest of them. Or if I wanted to, I could just, I'm selecting all of it and I'm just going to click and drag, and I could add that over to the notes. So the vocabulary list is, when I show teachers this, they audible wows. This is a great way for you and your student to, if you're researching stuff and they come across a word that they don't know, or words that they don't know, they can generate their own vocabulary list from those words and use those as practice terms for themselves. Here is this text. Normally, I wouldn't be able to have that read out loud. However, using Read&Write with the screenshot reader, I can literally grab text directly from a video
Clarendon Learn NG
and have it read out loud to me. That's amazing. So wherever there is text that a student needs to have read, they can either select it just as they normally would and use the play, pause, and stop, or they can use that screenshot reader and literally just drag a box around whatever text they're wanting read out loud. OrbitNote. What's really nice about this is when a student using Chrome, logged in with Shelton credentials, when they open up a PDF specifically in Google Classroom, it automatically opens up with OrbitNote. There's nothing that they have to do. There's no buttons that they have to click on or anything like that. It is automatically going to open up that PDF inside of OrbitNote. And so here's our PDF. We have selectable text. Some documents may not have selectable text. In case you're wondering, that is called OCR, which stands for Ocular Character Recognition. Sometimes a document that a teacher scans has not been OCR'd. And so if they try to select the text, nothing happens. But there's a little button up here that will appear that allows them to scan the text. And typically a pop-up will say, hey, this hasn't been scanned. Do you want to scan it? And then they can just say, yes, go ahead and scan it for me. And it usually happens very quickly, depending on the length of the PDF document. If it's 15 or 20 pages, then it might take some time. But if it's a single page like this, it's just going to be a matter of seconds for it to be able to scan. And once they have scanned it, then they'll be able to select the text. OrbitNote, you're going to see it looks very similar to Read&Write. Again, it is developed by the exact same company, TextHelp. So there's a lot of crossover here. So select the text. I hit the play button. Again, I hit pause again to pick back up. And then I can stop, and that stops it. Just as we saw before, it highlights the entire sentence being read and then highlights in a different color the specific word that's being spoken aloud at that time. All right, so just as before, we have the ability to select text and use our highlighters. So if they're getting handouts from a teacher that is potentially going to be for supplemental material, they can go into that and still do highlights and collections and vocabulary terms, all that wonderful stuff. And there, I've cleared it. So they also have the ability to do what they call freehand drawing. So if they're having to do a diagram or something like that, they can just click on this little pen, choose their line thickness, the line color, and then they just start doodling away just like so. You'll notice that the freehand drawing button is colored red. So that tells me that it is active right now. And if I want to turn it off, I just simply click on it once more and we see that it goes back to gray. This is now a selectable little image. I can expand it or shrink it to change its size. And then I can also just hit delete on my keyboard to get rid of it. But they also have the text box tool. And so when I click on that, the T for text goes red. Now, wherever I click, it is going to generate a text box that I can begin typing in. They can adjust the size of the font. They can adjust the color. They can also have it play back to them. They can also use the talk and type function inside of these text boxes. This is a text box. There we go. Again, I do have to go back through and make edits as needed, but then they can click and drag this box wherever they need it to be. Wherever they click, it's going to pop up that text box. So they need to make sure that they go in and turn the text box off if they're wanting to try and do different stuff like the writing. They also have the ability to bring in images either from the computer or from their Google Drive. And I have not played around with this yet, but they are integrating math tools for these PDFs now. So they do have another extension called Equatio. You can kind of see down here at the bottom, it says powered by Equatio. So this is another tool that they have. So your student may have already been exposed to this depending on what grade they're in and who they have for math. The last two tools I want to talk about, dictionaries and picture dictionaries built into both Read&Write and OrbitNote. And so here are those two buttons, and I can click on those and it brings up a dictionary for me. And whatever word I have highlighted, it's going to, it didn't do inclined planes very well. Let's do length. And so whatever word I click on, it is going to update that dictionary in real time. And those are definitions that I can have read out loud. And then we also have the picture dictionary, which again will update in real time as different words are selected. As we click in real time, it is going to update the definitions as well as the picture dictionary for us. Thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to getting y'all's questions.